Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to another new and exciting episode of the Whiskey Cove. And on today's edition, we are returning to the Whiskey Face-Off series, where we pit Maker's Mark cask strength up against Weller Full Proof. You know the drill, run that video. Alright then folks, let's get into today's episode, shall we? Thank you for watching the Whiskey Cove, and thank you for anybody who subscribes out there. We really appreciate it. If you want to support the channel even further, consider Patreon and going over to the Whiskey Cove website to purchase some of these premium glasses. However, let's get into the video, shall we? So we are pitting two whiskies up against each other blind as part of the Face-Off series. So we have a contender A, which is Weller Full Proof. This is coming in at 57% alcohol by volume, or 114 proof. This is Buffalo Trace's wheated mash bill. And today that will be facing Maker's Mark cask strength, coming in at 56.25, so 0.75 less than the Weller. This is the cask strength, this is batch 21-08. So this is obviously Maker's Mark wheated mash bill. There we are, both wheated bourbons. So why did we choose the Maker's Mark cask strength instead of any of the other offerings, such as Maker's 46? I didn't want to go to the limited offerings, I wanted to stick to the core range. The Maker's Mark 46, if you watch the Maker's Mark blind battle that we did over 3 episodes, the cask strength finished above the 46. So this is the best offering, I feel like, of the core range that Maker's Mark do, which is why we're doing this one blind up against the Weller Full Proof. Also, if you watch the Weller, the blind Weller battle that we did, Weller Full Proof did very well. So consider watching those 2 videos after today. So what we'll do is we will get these whiskies into glasses, we'll get them mixed up blind, and then we'll come back and then we'll taste through them and pick them apart, and then eventually pick our winner for today. So let's go ahead and do that and come back. All right then folks, and we are back, and I have no idea which whiskey is in which glass. I just don't. They've been mixed up for me by my wife. I wasn't in the room at the time, so like I said, no idea which is in which glass. I put the 2 bottles on the side and they are not reflected of which glass is which. They just are there from the intro, and just to remind ourselves which whiskies that we have here today. So again, we've mixed them up, and this will be glass 1, and then this will be glass 2. We'll take some breaks in between the tastings, go back to them, analyze some stuff, and then we'll eventually come back with today's winner there as well. So let's go into glass 1. We'll start from your left and go to your right there. So just looking at it in the glass, it does look, just as I'm rolling it, quite nice and thick, quite very taut, I guess, if you like how the whiskey kind of just sticks together. It looks very oily and very inviting in the glass, which is, I always appreciate that in the whiskey. And I find that it does transition into the mouthfeel of the whiskey as well, just kind of how I can identify it in the glass. And this looks like it's going to have a pretty decent mouthfeel and kind of sticks really well to the glass there, maybe lending to the sweetness of the whiskey a little bit there. So let's go into in for a nose here, glass 1. Just get really nice vanilla notes there, like a baked vanilla apple pie from McDonald's. Because you get those bacon spices that you can associate with wheated bourbons. Those bacon spices are beautiful, and you get that beautiful vanilla that kind of cuts through it all. You get a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of char there, but all in all, a very well-rounded and kind of complete whiskey on the nose. I am getting a touch of heat. It just reminds me that I'm drinking a cask strength whiskey, which is always understandable. And then there's definitely a gentle oak backbone there as well. There's not too much oak presence on the nose there. This is more a little bit about a sweeter bacon spices, appley nose, which is very inviting. Okay, let's go in for a taste. This is glass 1. So straight off the bat, like I predicted in the beginning, great mouthfeel, very well balanced, a very nice pillowy feel in the mouth, not abrasive whatsoever when it comes to the mouthfeel. Nice and thick, does a really good job of coating your palate there as well, not too thin. Kind of more sticks to the front palate as opposed to the cheeks there and the roof of the mouth as well. Big takeaway so far as I'm tasting through this, there's a lot more wood on the palate with this. In the beginning, I kind of got a touch of sweetness, but the wood just kind of took over straight away, kind of dried out the whiskey a little bit. But then you did get some residual sweetness on the palate as you kind of move through some of those flavors there as well. And then not much heat there for a cask strength whiskey. Really nicely rounded out that wood note was with kind of like the residual sweetness on there. And I guess slight Kentucky hug, but it's, like I said, very well rounded out. It makes for an easy drink for the most part. Let's go and try it again here. Yes, this whiskey is remarkably easy to drink. I do get a touch of cracked pepper on the tongue there. Definitely a little bit of heat that's coming from the second taste. Not really getting much of that apple at all, if anything, coming through, but I still get some of those bacon spices. Cinnamon is a big one in this one as well. Maybe something like a touch of allspice there as well, or maybe add more to the ginger note. But you're definitely having to pull that out a little bit there. Not as much barrel char that I would come to expect from a higher ABV whiskey. However, there's still that sweetness, that residual sweetness, and you get that touch of sweetness right at the beginning there. So this is a little bit more like spicier and oakier. It doesn't have much fruit. Maybe, if I'm trying to pull apart, maybe a touch of cherry, but that's more of kind of like it's more of like an artificial cherry note there. I think of like a Jim Beam Stag or like cherry candy there as well. Let's go for one more taste here. I'm getting a little bit more like a powdered sugar note on this third pass. It seems like every taste I have with this whiskey, I get a little bit more pepper heat on the front tongue there as well, but I'm still getting that really great mouthfeel that this whiskey, whichever one it is, has. So with that being said, we're going to cleanse our palate here, and then going to dive into glass 2. All right then, folks, so this is going to be glass 2. Let's have a little look at it in the light here. So much like the first glass, it does look very nice and oily and thick in the glass, maybe a shade darker, but I think that's pollen straws a little bit here. Again, the proofs are very similar. You have 57 and then you have 56.25, so very similar on the proof there. Age might be a little bit of a factor here. How Maker's Mark do their whiskey is that they're constantly rotating their warehouse. So the barrels will come from the top and slowly go down to the bottom and then come back up. They're constantly rotating there. Where to my knowledge, Weller or Buffalo Trace do not do that with this. Even though it's a blend of different whiskeys, but still. Let's go for a nose. So I wouldn't say this is very different from the first glass, but there's definitely some different notes there. You're definitely getting more of a brown sugar, creme brulee style nose. I was getting a touch of barrel char on the first one on the nose, but it's got a lot more going on with those barrel notes. There's definitely a sweet vanilla in there as well, but it's more of like a cracked vanilla bean or like a bacon vanilla syrup, I guess, or bacon, what is that, the vanilla liquid, whatever that's called. Not really getting any fruit at this moment. Maybe a touch of like a citrus orange or like some sort of citrus chocolate there as well, but not really anything too powdery. Very inviting nose, that's for sure. Okay, let's go for a taste. This is glass 2. Wow, that was so oily. If the first one was oily, this was just incredibly much more. Wow, just the first takeaway. This is just incredibly oily. This does so much and by way of coating the whole mouth. Yes, we had some really good mouthfeel with glass 1, but with this one, it's just everywhere. And you can maybe hear, as I'm talking, kind of just start picking at it, because it is, like, as I always say, that gift that keeps on giving. You're still getting a bunch of different notes there as you keep tasting it. You do get that sweet caramel burnt brown sugar punch in the beginning there as well. And as that transitions maybe more into the mid palate, you do get a great oak note that kind of takes over a little bit, but you still have that sweetness that comes through the whole thing, and you get a little bit of spice there. This isn't a spicy whiskey. This is more of like a sweeter whiskey with a lot of like that barrel char oak note and that barrel char sweetness there as well. Excellent mouthfeel, some really great sweet notes and wood characteristic in this first glass there as well. Let's go in for another place, on this second glass. Let's go in for another taste here. So on this second one, I'm definitely getting more oak tannins as I drink through it on this second pass. Yes, it coats your mouth very well, but it kind of dries it out in that same essence as well. It does a great job of coating your whole mouth with sweetness, and then those oak tannins are kind of sticking up a little bit more with every bit you taste there as well. I wouldn't say this is a tannin or an oak bomb, but it definitely has more age on it than glassware, and you definitely feel that presence there as well. And I think that it works really well with those sweet barrel char notes that this whiskey has to offer. Pretty close so far in terms of standard of whiskey, but I do think that some of the glasses, or I do believe that one of the glasses is probably edging it just a little bit right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this video. I'm going to taste back through them a couple more times, make some other notes, and then we'll come back with the results there. All right then, folks, and we are back, and with much deliberation, we now have them in an order. It was really interesting to actually go back between the whiskeys a bunch of times because it definitely released different notes. This first glass had this really nice like caramel, toffee, apple note that kind of was really prevalent there. A little bit on the lighter side after trying the glass number 2 in terms of mouthfeel. Even though we talked a little bit about having a good mouthfeel when we went back and forth, this just had such a great mouthfeel. It put this one to shame a little bit, but in its own right, excellent mouthfeel. On the second one, got a lot more like butterscotchy, like again, really thick, really did a great job of just coating them out as a whole. So which glass was today's winner? It's gonna be glass 2. I think that the mouthfeel was just incredible. And if you folks watch the channel quite a lot at home, you know I like a really nice, thicker mouthfeel with a lot of oil and decent amount of wood and sweetness. And I feel like this whiskey had it all. This is an incredible whiskey. And I have no idea, I think it might be the Weller, but knowing what I know about Maker's Mark, I love Maker's Mark as well. So if it is the Maker's Mark, I wouldn't be surprised. However, I do think that it's the Weller because it has this very specific Weller vanilla kind of oaky note, and it has that really great mouthfeel as well. So with that being said, let's double check. Let's see what it is. I have the cheat sheet in my pocket here. So today's winner is going to be A, and that is Weller full proof. And let's make sure we got this right. And that is going to be B, and that is Maker's Mark. So, what did we learn, I guess, from doing this blind today? I kind of thought that the Maker's Mark cask strength was kind of in with a bit of a shot today because I always put Maker's Mark as great alternatives for Weller because they are. It's another wheated bourbon out of Kentucky. They do some really great stuff. They do some excellent of the releases. Even though this finished really high up in the Maker's Mark blind, I kind of wish at this point we might have put this against one of the other ones that finished above this, and that's the BRT02, because I feel like the BRT02 has more in common with the Weller than this one. I feel like the BRT02 also has a really oily mouthfeel and has a really great sweet palate with some really excellent oaky backbone notes. So maybe that might be another thing for another time. However, for today, Weller bossed this competition. Yes, it was quite close in the beginning, but as I tasted through more and more, I kind of fell in love with the second glass. Those burnt brown sugars, that beautiful mouthfeel, it just kind of won me over completely with that. So today's winner was Weller Full Proof. However, if you can't get Weller Full Proof, definitely get Maker's Mark cask strength because that is an excellent findable alternative for Weller Full Proof. So as we drink through the world's whiskey one glass at a time, cheers.